Cool. Afternoon, folks. Hope you have a beer at hand. Drop me a comment in the chat and let me know what you're drinking so that I know mostly that my sound is working. Welcome along to episode number 2 of Friday Beers. Today would have been our first day out of lockdown, but before the extension was announced. There was a bit of optimism this week that the ban on alcohol might be lifted for the remainder of lockdown. On Tuesday, the presidency responded to the Gauteng Liquor Board or Liquor Forum's letter of demand asking for more time, and that announcement will be made by the end of the week. Yesterday's announcement implies that the response was a bit of a delaying tactic. The longer prohibition in South Africa continues, the more craft breweries we will lose. Not enough is being done by government to protect these businesses. People's hopes and dreams are being destroyed, livelihoods are being taken away, and many jobs are going to be lost. Today I'm joined with, by Nick Brewers Association, Julian from Just Brewing, at Top 10 Brew Pub and Beer Bootcamp, and Megan from Clockwork and Africa Brew. Yeah, these guys wear many hats, showing their true dedication to the industry. We'll chat about this. We'll chat about how this industry. We'll chat about how this industry can survive post-lockdown. And as we drink more beers, the topics are going to get much lighter, I'm sure. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Here's Mike.
Cheers.
Cool. Nick, let's start with you. What can you tell us a bit about what the CBASA or BASA have been up to this week in an attempt to get the alcohol ban lifted?
Yeah, so it's a lot of engagement to try to, first and foremost, you want to try to help and you want to be part of the solution of the thing that we're all fighting and we're working towards. So it's kind of trying to figure that out. And then secondly, just trying to understand, help everybody in the situation and how devastating the situation is for small businesses. Yeah, so it's just really about trying to have a constructive dialogue.
Cool. Sorry, I don't know if there's an issue with.
Can you hear?
Yeah, no, I can hear you, but it doesn't look like. Trevor says he's having a connection problem there. I'm just trying to see why it's not going smoothly. It should be. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Sorry, guys. It looks like we've frozen here. Okay, cool. I think we're back. Nope, it's gone again. Oh, man. I can see you all perfectly as well. Even your one, Megan.
I'm just getting drunker and drunker.
Let me just try and
You've lowered the bit rate, Mike. You're on like a low bit rate on the thing.
Is it?
I normally go between the top and the middle. I normally try and go for the middle one.
I think it's lowered its
latency. Yeah.
I think it's lowered itself because of.
Yeah, I don't have good internet at the moment.
Okay, so it looks like we're moving again on the YouTube channel because I'm busy watching that on a separate device on a separate network. Yeah, so it looks like we're going again. A little bit like Stickman, stop motion animation. But let's see if this works.
Love you, dude.
Just gonna. Sorry, guys, this is a bit annoying. Just want to try something.
He's going to try turning it off and back on again.
Yeah.
See if that makes it any better. Good old bit of rebooting.
If you put a little tin foil around the top of the computer, maybe that'll help.
Does that normally work? Short of rebooting, I'm lost for ideas. Hang on a minute.
Oh, cool.
Choice.
Oh.
It seems to have sped up now. It seems to be working okay. I'm busy looking at the feed.
Cool. Yeah, we are back. Sorry, Nick. So you were saying, Nick.
Well, I don't remember. What were we talking
about what CBASA and what you guys have been up to, what you can do. Is there anything you can do?
Yeah. So it's mainly about trying to be a solution and have a constructive conversation about how devastating the complete prohibition is having on small businesses, particularly. And
yeah,
I think you want to be part of the solution, but you want to have a constructive conversation and say, look, this is really devastating, or obviously, like, there's a lot of thought that this is necessary, but is there room for compromise that can help sustain jobs and keep businesses from going under?
Yeah, sure. And Megan, are you seeing like much support from government for like to help keep you guys afloat? Is there much coming through in that way?
No, I've sent through a couple of applications, but I haven't heard anything back yet. It's a little bit concerning. So I'm preparing for the worst. Unfortunately, I think all brewers know that we live month to month. We don't really have provisions to last us for a few months. So things are a little bit difficult because even a 1 month shutdown is hurting us. But I will keep trying with the government help. I worry about taking a loan from the government because ultimately I'm still going to pay it back. But any help is very much grateful. But we perhaps going to start pushing more direct sales for after lockdown. So pre-orders now, so at least there's a little bit of cash flow up front now. And then as soon as lockdown is lifted, we can send all of those orders out. And people are very, very keen for that. And people are amazingly supportive about that idea as well. So Oaks are happy to support their local, which is great.
Yeah, sure. And from your side, Julian?
Yeah, no, it's a very sad state of affairs, as we know. Getting the staff that obviously can't work, even though they normally work only 4 days. I mean, we went down from, it was literally Tuesday to Sunday. We've closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so we were basically only operating 4 days a week. And of the 4 days a week, we literally do turnover Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday. So it's really, really hectic on the guys as well. A lot of the extra incomes comes from tips as well. So it's not just the salaries in the brew pub, but if the people weren't coming in, and then obviously towards the end, when they initially just put in the lockdown on the time, so obviously we couldn't sell alcohol after 1 o'clock on a public holiday or a Sunday. And most people come around 2 o'clock on a Sunday and have a good couple of beers in the evening and a couple of takeaways after that. And that just ground to a complete halt. So yeah, massive problem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I guess there's not a huge amount that anyone can particularly do, to put any more pressure on lessening up restrictions. There's not much we can do or say. It's kind of out of everybody's hands and in the government's hands.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it, and it doesn't look like it's going to be after the lockdown. I mean, today we were meant to be kind of doing it, and already said so. In the wine industry, they said yes, you can export, and then yesterday immediately said no transport of alcohol, which obviously means if you've packed ready to go to the ports, you cannot do the export now either. So now you've basically cancelled all alcohol, and on the 30th of April, when it comes to there, I don't think we're going to have immediate opening of it as well. I think it's going to be a good couple of months before they actually even think about opening restaurants for dine-in. They might open restaurants for takeaway only, and things like that. So we're going to just be thinking out the box on, obviously, I don't think alcohol is going to be unbanned immediately. They're going to do it either in a staged a process or kind of like slowly get it, because if you open up bottle stores and immediately after lockdown, unlike the shutdown, which was immediate, it's going to be pandemonium, chaos. There'll be stampedes, there will be, unless it's done in a controlled fashion, there's going to be chaos.
But I mean, even with the prohibition of alcohol, we're seeing all this extra issue of looting and people trying to make alcohol at home, which is probably unwise. But you know, it's all, I understand what the government's trying to do, but there's all this extra sideline stuff, and the looting is becoming an issue. So I don't know what the answer is, but for me, I feel like it needs to be a little bit more restricted, maybe just bottle stores only, and perhaps over a certain hours in a day. I don't know. But as Jules says, perhaps certain bottle stores only, or I don't know, because as Jules says, there's going to be a stampede. People are desperate.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. There's been a lot of. I suppose one of the uptakes from it is that there's been a lot of enthusiasm in home brewing, or a lot of enthusiasm in home fermented products. I was listening to Murray's
Yes.
fermented live talk last in the week, and baking is massively on the increase, and yeah, I mean, hopefully maybe something will come out of the fact that more people are interested in home brewing. At least that's where all you guys started, right?
Absolutely.
As brewers.
Yeah. There you go.
I got a message. A friend of mine's trying to make cider at home, so I got a message this afternoon just for some hints and tips, and she's busy converting an old stethoscope into a bubbler tube. So people are doing all sorts in their homes right now.
I saw some guy on Facebook today using a glove for an airlock on a 5-liter water bottle, and I was like, genius idea. I wish I'd thought of that. I brewed a hard seltzer. I did a bit of a video for attempted brewing a hard seltzer in the week. If it turns out drinkable, I'll put the video out there. But
Awesome.
but using like ingredients from the supermarket and trying, like not to use fermenters and airlocks and stuff that we have at home because other people don't have them, so.
Yeah, for sure.
But I wish I thought of the glove.
Cool.
Sorry? Sorry, Nick?
Oh, I said, that's cool.
Sorry. I thought you.
The hard seltzer idea sounds cool.
So I'm struggling now because I'm watching the connection to make sure we're still working, and I'm watching like a couple seconds delayed. So I see your movements a couple minutes like after you make them. Dani also mentions here that it doesn't help that there's a negative alcohol bias from some in the government either, and I mean I think that's been a factor from the start that negative.
That's very much. I mean, you heard Becky said he's saying for his birthday. For his birthday, he wishes that there'll be no more alcohol sold in the country. It would be his birthday present. I mean, unbelievable. Anyway.
So Wendy, you know Wendy, Julian,
Possibly.
Wendy's also part of the CBASA, hey, Craft Brewers Association of South Africa. Yeah. So she says there's loads you can do support on online efforts, write to the governments, express your views. So yeah, I mean and I think obviously as you guys as members of the Craft Brewers Association and with BASA, there is stuff that you guys are doing, and I guess as public, we can also write and try and put pressure on governments, but I think what I've mentioned.
Your democratic right,
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we've got many at the minute, but yeah.
That's right.
That's another problem. And then the POA says no one is holding beer, everyone's out of stock. Yeah, it's true.
We only prepared for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's it. So getting back, I think if we can just get back to manufacturing is the first thing. Keeping beer in cold fermenters is a good thing. It's possible once you've done the dry hopping and the pulling off of the yeast. You're obviously able to keep it in either in bright or in unitank until ready. But there's obviously a limit on that on time as well, as long as you're keeping it cold and everything. You know, and it'll actually mature. You know, it'll mature nicely, but obviously then you've got to package it and get it out and sell it, which is the part that we can't do at the moment.
And I guess it also depends on beer styles brewed as well. Yeah, I mean, there'll be some beers that, like some of your beers, Nick, will be happy to sit for a year or 5 years, or some of your beers in
the barrel beers
barrels there.
Go and go. We've got a Pilsner that's aging that we crashed kind of right before, so that we got some extra weeks at 0, so that'll be nice for the Pilsner. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry, I'm laughing at Cam's comment here. Cam Gray from the South Easters says that one of their club members showed a photo using a condom on a fermenter as an airlock, and I didn't think of that one either, funnily enough.
You know what? I'm sure it'll work. Just sanitize it.
You can get those free from the government, so that's great.
Oh,
so they are helping brewers. There you go. Wendy also says people who are brewing and selling illegally should stop. That can obviously damage all of our efforts. I mean, that's definite. I mean, it's not going to help anyone. That doesn't even help the government because they don't get their portion of it.
Nope, correct. That's the problem. Is the illicit trade is rife. Black market trade of alcohol and cigarettes. I mean, it's happening. And the problem is it's us, the small guys, that are going to get affected. Everything will carry on in the background. And if I went back to the government now and said, listen, I've just renewed my micro license, 11,000 Rand, are they going to give me back the last 30 days that I paid for? They're not going to give me anything back. They're not going to give me a cent back of money that I paid for that as well.
I mean, that's what the history of prohibition has shown. It never works. You just opportunity for organized crime. It's what's happening right now.
For sure. No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, organized crime is going to be much more. Ross says, in your opinion, if we have to try and make beer and alcohol at home, is there a safe option, or should we just avoid it completely? I've heard pineapple beer is pretty easy to make. No, I mean, those sort of things I think personally are pretty safe to make at home. I think trying to be clean and sanitary is pretty important when you're brewing at home. We don't have access to sanitizers like you would have in the brewery, or like you would have in a home brewery, and you can't really. There's not a lot of options to buy sanitizers from supermarkets and the essential service places that are open. But there's a couple out there. I saw you can buy iodine from Discam, and there's a dilution factor that I looked up that you can use, and that would work as a pretty effective sanitizer. Well, I don't know. What's your thoughts? I mean, Megan, you spoke about it before about it potentially being dangerous for people to brew. What's your thoughts?
I think a rule of thumb is if it smells and tastes bad, don't drink it. If it tastes pleasant, then you're probably okay. But if it's undrinkable, don't drink through it just because you want the alcohol. But it's generally speaking, the alcohol is going to kill the pathogens, the disease-causing microorganisms. So you're generally going to be fine. But as you said, Mike, just sanitize as best you can. Wash your hands, wash your bucket that you're fermenting in, that sort of thing.
I think a nice thing as well, if you're brewing like those pineapple ones, and if you're brewing I did a lemon hard seltzer, adding lemon juice to it, you're going to drop the pH massively as well. So once that gets fermenting, low pH, bit of alcohol, then
for sure. Yeah. And also, if you sorry, Nick.
Oh, I was saying,
most oaks are going to be using baker's yeast.
Yes, yeah. Baker's yeast I use baker's yeast, yeah.
So baker's yeast is super active. So you toss that into a sugary liquid, it's going to go crazy and it'll outcompete anything that you need to worry about. So as long as you're pitching a high enough amount of your baker's yeast, you should be good to go.
Yeah, no, for sure. definitely. Just going back to our other point here, Cedar says in the comments that he thinks Becke's point was just in relation to lesser violence in general. Lots of people in hospital over the weekend due to alcohol-related, over weekends, sorry, due to alcohol-related violence. I mean, that's obviously a fair comment, but it also points to a bigger problem in society, not necessarily, alcohol-related violence, but violence in general. And I don't think you can pinpoint our lack of generalized policing and violent crimes purely on alcohol. There's lots of other factors that tie into that as well. I don't know, from a regulatory point of view, Nick, do you agree or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's, we're in a police state right now and you're locked in your house. So, I don't think that's a fair direction of causation. I mean,
you mean that by being in a police...
If that's the case, then why don't we just lock everybody up in their house for the rest of their lives? We'll stop all crime.
Exactly. I mean, what's like 57 people in South Africa are murdered every day, and if we lock everyone in the house, then that murder rate's going to drop naturally, right? It's
Yeah, and just to make sure people don't get out, you can put bars and just lock everybody in. I think it'll be super safe. Yeah.
Keith McClintock says that he has a pack of lager yeast. What should he brew next with the limited ingredients? Go on, Megan. You hit the lager question.
Oh dear, limited ingredients. So that suggests he's probably using supermarket ingredients. I would take
brew
it as
next time
that.
with the limited ingredients. Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know. I mean, you're going to struggle to get malt substitute from the supermarket.
Yeah. So he's probably best off just trying to make a cider or a fruit beer.
Unless he has a pack of lager yeast. And Keith, come back to us with any malt-based ingredients you have, and we'll ask that question again. Adam Scott
malt,
says
that's a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Adam Scott says, has prohibition ever worked anywhere in the world? Anywhere? Certainly not in the UAE. Just drives it underground. Yeah, I mean, some of my on a group, I saw some people sharing a wine recipe and a beer recipe that they created while they were in Saudi. I mean, it's like people are going to drink, right? It doesn't stop it. And I mean, Nick, going back to the history of your country, it didn't stop people drinking in prohibition days. Not that you were around to see that, Nick.
Yeah, I think Nick might have frozen. But anyway, so Keith has got malt, he's got dextrose.
Awesome.
You can actually make
okay.
And hops.
No, then you're good. Yeah, she doesn't mention that, I'll just what about hops, If you've got some, I know Donnie uses wormwood and all of that kind of stuff that you can find in your garden, for his...
Donnie's beer here.
His gruits, yes. So Donnie's the gruit man, and I know he always goes to his garden for a lot of his... somebody was asking about lemongrass the other day, and obviously, yes, you can. Less is more, and a lot of your things like wormwood and all of that in your beer, you can use as well for bittering.
Coriander, bay leaves, even I've seen people using for a bit of I wouldn't add much of that.
But he also did say he's only got a lager yeast, so I don't know if he's got temperature control or not, but if you bring a lager at ale temperatures, you might find it's not particularly lager-like. Otherwise, you might need to leave it for a bit longer. So I don't know, you probably need it quite soon. But yeah, if you've got a lager yeast, you might find that it'll be a little bit fruitier than your standard lagers, but it'll still be fun.
I've seen those Fermenters lager yeast, some of them are quite tolerant to high temperatures, even up to 18 or 19 degrees.
That'll be the upper limit would be about 18. It's already pushing it at 18, 16, 17. But if you've got temperature control, no problem. You can ferment it very comfortably between 8 and 10. and it'll be very, very happy, and then and drop it down for a crash, you know.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that, if you just want to just do a plain, if you've got pale malt, which is obviously the easiest thing to use, you can literally do quite a few variants of that. If you've got Pilsner malt, you can actually make a Pilsner. So
Yeah.
yeah, just remember a longer boil on the malt if you're doing Pilsner, just to get the DMS off.
So Featherstone says, cheers to POA for promoting responsible home brewing. Yeah, her Facebook page has been great for loads of cool little recipes that I've seen.
Home
fact, there's been a lot of
home cooked recipes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just trying to catch up on these questions quickly. Oh yeah, Cam says you can get iodine based from Discam. Yeah, I saw that. There's a couple. I think there's a 7.5% and a 10% one, and then there's a formula where you can just work out the sort of dilution, but it's tiny. I think like for 5 liters, you need less than a teaspoon or something diluted in water. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Of course, it's there's the boiling water option as well. So if you've got a bucket that you want to ferment in, just boil a couple of kettles, put the boiling water into the bucket. Just be careful. When I say shake it around, maybe don't shake it around because it'll pop the lid, but just be careful, swirl it around a little bit, and yeah, boiling water is a great sanitizer.
Or if you have a plastic that's not that tolerant to high temperatures, but you can do like 60 degrees, you can do like pasteurization temperatures for a longer period of time, right? So, I mean, if it's in there for 60 degrees for 45 minutes, it's going to kill most.
Yeah, try and aim for above 70 degrees if you can.
Sure. But I think like a lot of those PET bottles are only sort of tolerable up to 65, and I wouldn't want to risk plastic leaching into the solution either. That might be worse than a bit of wild yeast.
Yep.
Yeah, Trevor mentions that Ibn from Mad Giant posted a ginger beer recipe online as well. I saw that looked pretty cool.
Awesome.
Featherstone asks, what's the future of hard seltzers in South Africa? So I did a bit of research on hard seltzers because they're huge in the States now. It looks like the main reason they're so big over there is because of the tax and sort of what's the word, like licensing constraints that you have. Maybe Nick, you know a bit more about the hard seltzer trend in the States, but I think it's because they can't necessarily mix vodka with carbonated water, or they get charged a lot more for it if they do.
That doesn't have a lot to do with the popularity of it. It's just how they produce it there. So malt liquor or malt alcoholic beverages are taxed at a certain rate, which is lower than spirits. So so they make a malt-based alcoholic beverage that they then mix with carbonated water and flavoring, to where you would normally just mix vodka with sparkling water and flavoring. But if you add the distilled spirit, it's taxed at a much higher rate. Does that make sense?
No, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's why they went from like to brewing this sort of malt liquor, right?
Yeah, there's a whole
rather
category
than just blending
of products like in the States, they call flavored malt beverages. So it's basically a ready to mix, cocktail type thing. So as far as like why is it popular, it's huge there. It's completely blown up. I think it's meeting a niche or like a segment of the market that hadn't really been met with current offerings. But it's a completely different market than South Africa. So the question people are always asking is like, oh, will that take off here? I have no idea. But you have to keep in mind imports are 20 to 30% of the market there. Craft beers 15%. Cider's big. So it was kind of, I think it meets the needs of a lot of these drinkers. And the question is whether or not you have that same need here.
Yeah, for sure. I actually watched something very interesting on that Craft Brewers conference. There's one of the talks on a guy. It was a sponsored talk. It was a guy selling a like a de-alcoholizer for to make like non-alcoholic or low alcoholic like less than 0.5% ABV beers. And they had a system where you put you brewed a 5% lager, let's say, and you put that through their system, and it took out the alcohol and mixed it with water, so like carbonated water. So you had hard seltzer coming out one end, and you had non-alcoholic beer coming out of the other end. So you kind of got like your two products, and then they don't get taxed. It was obviously to do with the taxation there, because then they don't get taxed on. It wasn't distilled to get the alcohol out, although I think it kind of was vacuum distilled, but there was kind of a whole loophole they got around.
It's a vacuum distillation, and that's how most of the big brewers do the non-alcoholic, is a vacuum distillation.
Because of flavor, right? Because it doesn't taint the flavor so much, or apparently.
Well, what Heineken does is, as far as I know, is what they do is in their process, they actually take the volatiles out, they do the vacuum distillation and put the volatiles back in again to give it the exact same flavor as what a beer would be. I mean, it's a highly complicated process in a vacuum, but I mean, for them, they're getting 0.05, which is deemed pretty much a non-al beer.
Murray from Fermented says, "Please tell the brewers we love them." There you go.
Oh, thanks, Murray.
Oh, thanks, Murray. Love you.
Send bread because we got no beer. No,
Danny says, if you go below 50% grain, it's not considered beer. So spirits excise would be applied to hard seltzers in this country. So there you go. So that's probably one of the reasons why maybe it's not worth making as that, and you might as well just blend ethanol with carbonated water. Yeah.
Yep.
Oops. Oh, I just lost where I was on my questions. That's annoying.
Come on, Mike.
Trevor says you're very Texan, Nick.
I was born in Texas.
Where's your Stetson? You need a hat. Get you a hat.
I own a pair of cowboy boots. Don't worry about that.
So Cameron mentions that Neve from White Labs this week said that Baker's yeast is an ale yeast strain with high phenolics, so it's great for a heifer or some kind of Belgian beer, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of phenolics from that. And remember that the brewer's yeast or even bread yeast, it's going to be very, very different. It's kind of like the quick of that, because it ferments very fast. You know, it's going to be almost instantaneous fermentation, as opposed to a lot of the other yeast, like brewer's yeast, will just be a lot slower out of the stable. And that's one thing. I mean, we have updated the website with the links to the presentations, just for those of you who are watching, and I know we're looking eagerly for those presentations.
That was a great talk, eh? But what you got one coming up this evening, yeah?
Yeah, so we have got John Keeling from the Fuller's Brewery. Obviously, he was the master brewer there. He was there for 18 years, basically just working in the brewery, and then he was the head brewer and brewing director for 18 years after that as well. So pretty much 40 years at the Fuller's Brewery, and he's going to be talking about recipe design. So that's going to be a really cool topic tonight at 8 o'clock on the Beer Boot Camp YouTube channel.
I think we'll throw Wendy a link in the chat if she's watching there for it, so guys can get access. But you got it on Facebook, eh? There's an event on Facebook.
It's an event on Facebook and everything, and we'll be definitely able to. We'll see if we can chuck it in the link for you guys in a couple of seconds for so. Yeah.
I think John still introduces himself as John from Fuller's, even though he's been gone a couple of years now. He's still...
Well, he handed over to what was Georgina, which was the first female brewster at Fuller's. Basically, just afterwards, she was there for a year before. Well, Asahi bought out Fuller's. You know, independent beer until you're not. So kind of after 150 odd years. But he is very much still a brand ambassador for Fuller's. He does the odd beer tour at the brewery and everything. So yeah, he's still very much involved in the background, but happily retired.
So here's a question for all three of you guys from Adam Scott. He says, it seems the biggest challenge for micros is cash flow to survive. Is there merit in slightly discounting future orders to the craft community for delivery or collection once you're up and running again? I mean, Megan, you've got something similar, hey? Is she frozen?
Yep.
Julian, have you looked at that option? Okay,
yeah,
go on.
Can you?
You're back.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Sorry, Megan.
Go, Jules.
No, you go. We can see
Okay.
you again. Why are you going?
Okay. Okay. Yes, and I think so. I think the people who have already bought pre-orders from us will expect a free glass or something in the box. Thank you. Some kind of incentive for orders, whether it's including a special beer or a glass or a chance to win a T-shirt or something. That I think that's the way forward for sure.
Fantastic, yeah. And Julian, have you looked at something similar or?
So what we're doing at the moment, we basically have discounted the cans. We're looking at either a drive-in through option at the brewery, get 4 cans for a reduced price. Normally we selling cans at 35 Rand, you get 4 for 120. And if you want bigger orders than that, just let us know as well. We have had a couple of loyal customers actually just before lockdown ordered a couple of cases, which is thank you very much to them for the support and everything like that. So yeah, we'll definitely still continue the off-con service. And we'll definitely try and obviously work in the specials in terms of get a 4-pack for $120, 440 cans. We obviously have got a little canning line at the brewery, and we're going to be pushing that as well. And then we will definitely look at a delivery model. We just got to obviously find out what's the best way to do it. But drive through, drive in will probably be the best value for money at the moment.
And Nick, I guess you're in a bit of a more unique situation without having any packaged beer, hey?
Yeah, we'd actually been working for a while now on packaging, and so we've been kind of doing a lot of tests and experimenting with this bottling line. So we kind of got pretty close to getting that up and running before the shutdown.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first. That's the first order of business whenever we get back to get that up and running. You know,
it just means that right now you don't have any product to offer for like pre-sales or anything like that, right?
Yeah, you know, we thought about that, but I don't know when exactly we're going to be up and running with it. So I don't want to tell somebody, look, we'll get it to you a week whenever we get back, or 2 weeks when we get back, and not be able to. I need to feel confident that we can fill on that, you know.
If you're looking for a packaging recommendation, I just opened this can here from Afro Caribbean that I found hiding at the back of my fridge, and it's flipping old. I don't know how old it is, but it's seriously old. But it tastes. I mean, obviously the hops have mellowed slightly, but I mean, I don't know if you can see that. In fact, that's not a true reflection of the color because that looks dark in the picture. But it's like it's bright still, and there's no oxidization at all, and it's really holding up. So well done, Greg. I don't know if Greg's watching, but well done, Greg. this is holding up well. This is probably, I don't know how old it is. Hop Monster.
That's old. I think it's
Greg.
old. No, it's fairly old. But then again, I did find a whole lot of Greg's beers in the back of my fridge as well at one stage, and yeah, they hold out pretty well.
I mean, it's 7.8% IPA, but it says scarily dry hop. Oh, so it probably was from Halloween last year. So it's probably from October. So yeah, it's
a long time. Yeah.
Hold up.
Yeah. What happened, Nick, with your 7 Brewers beer that was supposed to be launching again just before lockdown?
That's a good question. So, dude, it's in tank. It's aging in tank. Yeah, the release was supposed to be like the first or second weekend of lockdown. I think it was the first weekend of lockdown.
First, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I tasted it the other day. It's amazing. So that's probably one of the first things we'll try to get going once we get some more certainty on what we can do and when. We'll probably put that in like a 660 ml bottle or something nice. Something cool with it. Yeah. So yeah, but no, it's aging at 0 in the tank. So
it is also, even though it's a hoppy beer, it's also a beer that's not going to hurt to be aged a little bit. I mean, it's
it's so bitter and it's so boozy.
Yeah.
It actually, like, even when we brew it and you finish it takes 3 to 4 weeks aging before it's at its peak anyway. So it's kind of improving, I'd say, at this point. If we had to go another month or something, then maybe it'll start turning down a little bit. But it's because of the bitterness and the alcohol, it's improving at this point.
Yeah. Okay. No. Cool. So it looks like I've caught up on questions, I think, in the comments there. But if I did miss any, then please just re-ask them again, because I'm down at the bottom. So if I've missed them, then I've just skipped past when I scrolled too happily by mistake before. But I did want to have a chat today with you guys as well, because I know, like, some of you have been playing around with local ingredients, and we've seen some local maltsters pop up, and we've seen like some local hop suppliers, not just South African breweries, but we've seen some other. I think, Nick, you went out to the you've seen that guy growing like Cascade in South Africa, or and obviously we've seen some yeast, like Plato in Cape Town was a while back, and now obviously the guys in Bloemfontein, Liquid Culture. I mean, they're putting out some great yeast. So, like, how do you see the future of local ingredients? I think as craft brewers, you always tend to want to use the best ingredients, but you also, on the other hand, always want to try and use local ingredients at the same time. So, well, that's how I see it. Who wants to take it? It's sort of a question in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is. So from our point of view, we've tried various malts and everything, but obviously, being a commercial brewer, you want to try and keep consistency.
Sure.
So if you're using a certain malt for a certain beer, keep the malt and the malt bill, the hop bill, pretty much exactly the same as you can, to aim for that consistency. If, however, you want to try a new variant of it, yes, by all means, I reckon get some of the ingredients locally. I mean, we've been using Liquid Culture now for a lot of our, Kveek being a very common yeast at the moment for our farmhouse ale. We did it for our Cray Cray IPA. We used the strain of that yeast as well. And yes, supporting local yeast for us is great, because he's able to give us great service. We order the yeast. It's literally here in a day and a half after he's grown it and everything, and we're able to put our brew production together. So we can pitch, and then we can obviously pull it off. We can wash it. We can reuse the slurry where necessary as well, which is great. In terms of malt, we generally do our malts buying 2 or 3 quarters ahead, just in terms of you don't want to run out, and then the big guys obviously need to put it on boats and bring it in as well. And most of our malt is still imported, simply because we know what we're going to get. We get great efficiencies from that as well. We have tried other malts, but not to the same quality. I mean, we used to use SAB malt locally as well. After AB InBev took over it, getting it, the process to get it, when they're available to get it, it becomes kind of hit and miss. So if you normally work into your schedule, they won't work into your schedule. It's been tough. And just efficiencies of some of the imported malt we're using, we're getting a much better efficiency. So we're using less malt. And if you can get the same international malt at a similar price to a local malt, I'd say use the better efficiency. And that's what we use from our side. On the hop front, we actually get from a number of suppliers locally, but obviously most of the hops are imported, even though we do use local suppliers for the hops.
I think that's a big thing as well, because I mean, we say about buying local, but I mean, you know, if you're buying international malt, you still are buying from a local importer. You know,
100% correct. So everything is through a local small business that is getting it in bulk, and we give them the bulk orders to make a bigger bulk order, which hopefully at the end of the day we get some kind of price relief at the same time.
And Nick, you've brewed. I mean, your Cape Pale Ale for me is like the best example of South African hops I've tried. You know, like every time I visit you, I always order it because I'm always quite blown away that it is South African hops in there. It's that good, you know. So you've really nailed it. And as a foreigner, I include myself in the foreigners category, but as a foreigner, you know, to do that with local hops is awesome. But other local hops, have you been playing around with those much? Non-SAB hops?
Yeah. So the Cape Cone has been a fun project for us because we changed the blends here and there with the SAB ones. The other ones that we've used would be the locally grown Cascade from India Ale. So we've done 2 versions with that. The most recent one was a wet hop one. So we went and picked fresh, and then it was the Cape Cone. So like all the Whirlpool and dry hop editions were the SAB pellets. But then the hopback had a bunch of wet hop cones, you know.
Cool.
But I would say for us, like using local ingredients is a big part of what we do. Obviously, that beer features all South African hops. We've got a Pilsner that features some other varieties of South African hops, but then that also features 100% local grain as well. And then
Are you talking like SAB grain or Waltz malts or what?
We use Vaults for that, and then we've used some organic unmalted wheat in it as well.
Nice.
From a couple of farmers. So it's kind of what we can get from farmers. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's to give a sense of identity to the beers, and at times it does create some brewing challenges. But I think that's kind of fun to try to get creative in how you mash and how you brew with these ingredients and how you dry hop and how you exploring and trying to bring out the best of these local ingredients is kind of fun from a brewing standpoint.
Yeah, for sure.
And
a challenge as well.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like it's easy to make a good beer with Citra and Mosaic. You know, like it's
golden promise,
but
and you're done, eh?
Yeah, you know. But for me, it's a way to try to make South African craft beer distinct. I think a lot of times we're looking at what people are doing overseas, and we want to try to emulate that because we read about these cool beers online. But I think, I think it's important for us to try to take pride in our local ingredients, to take pride in what we're doing here, and think beyond that. And so it's really about giving a sense of identity and a sense of place to the beers. And that, like, so when we have tourists or we have South Africans, they can say, look, this, you know, I believe in this beer. This is part of who we are here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. 100%. Yeah. And Megan, like in Durban there, like, what different access do you have to local ingredients that perhaps the guys in Joburg don't have or do have and in Cape Town?
Yeah, so we try and go as local as much as possible. And we're lucky in that we're a small enough brewery that we can get away with using different ingredients. So if we want to try a different malt here or there or a different hop or whatever, we can get away with it because we can.
Oh, your sound's breaking up.
Smaller volumes. So the brewery can go down to about 150 liters. So that's great for shall I just keep talking and hope you hear something?
Yeah, no, it's come back. Yeah, please go.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I do find it quite funny because any ingredients that we get from overseas it comes via ship, and of course it comes straight past Durban Harbour and it goes all the way down to Cape Town, and then it'll come up to Durban again for when we order it. So it seems a little bit crazy that when we order from overseas, it comes right to our doorstep and off it goes again. But yeah, it's shipping around ingredients around is quite difficult, but we do our best. We're lucky that we've got a port here, so some come into the harbor here. So I think it's a little bit more difficult for the Joburg guys.
Sorry, you've got a bit of a lag every now and then there on you. Bit of robot talking for a while, and then you're back.
But it goes past Durban. You're right, Joburg. We're lucky if we order certain quantities, we get the delivery included, which is very important. You know, going out and getting the stuff ourselves does become quite pricey. You know, driving around, getting wearing your harvest jackets. You know, subject to all the rules of AB InBev as well. You know, it's quite tricky to get onto the plants these days. You know, so sometimes it's just easier to order. But a couple of other local ingredients that we do use, obviously, is some of the sorghum that we use as well, and hibiscus. We use dried hibiscus in our hibiscus Kolsch, which I'm currently. I know it looks like Kool-Aid, but it's a lovely. Can you see that pink color?
You're disappearing into your fermenters there. Looks like you're jumping into them.
Yeah, I'm just like hiding behind them. It's pretty cool. So if I take off the version, let me just do this quickly because it'll make it a little bit easier. You can see all my plates, but there's the hibiscus Kolsch. It is a beautiful, fantastic with the most awesome white head. And that's really, really cool. And that's local hibiscus flowers dried. And we do hibiscus in the whirlpool. And then we do a double dry hop with hops as well. And we use I think it's a French hop called Strichelspalt in that as well. Very, very nice.
Cool, man. I got a question here from Kieran, Nick, probably directed at you, asking what's the difference in the wet hop versus dry hop rate? Oh, and Kieran, I am wearing my Daya t-shirt. That's right, yeah. Sorry, go for it, Nick. Wet hop rate versus dry hop rate.
You can Google it, but it's, I think they're about 4 or 5 times much weight when they're wet, so it's like, I think generally we've done 4 to 6 times what the addition would be. So normally, let's say we do 500 grams of cones in the hop back. I think on this one we did a lot, but it's, we've done anywhere from like 4 to 6 kgs, so it's you use like a ton. It takes a lot.
Yeah. And do you get like more vegetal or grassy matter from using the wet hop?
So yeah, I haven't had any of that. I think if you overdid it, you probably could. For me, it's more of like a grassy kind of character, but it's not a ton of contact time that we use. And you also I think you have to make sure they're picked at the right time, and that you're using them fresh off the vine, so like not having them sit around. So no, we it's mainly been like this kind of green, like grassy kind of lime character, which is really cool.
Nice, man. How these corks in these bottles, huh? What's the trick of getting them
slowly pop? But anyway, we've used wet hops twice. Well done. You didn't get it all over you. We've used wet hops twice, and the volume and the mess is not worth it. Wet hop, cleaning up your everything after the putting wet hops into your boil kettle and things like that. It is you think dry hops make a mess. I mean, wet hops, now you've got, as Nick said, 5, 6, 7 times more in that everything else will just get blocked or stuck. Or make sure you put a filter before your plate heat exchanger, because it's going to get blocked up pretty solid if you don't manage it properly. But we did a beer a couple of years ago called Koalas in the Rain, and that was purely done with SAB wet hops from the farms, and the beer was great, but the brewing side of it was quite hectic.
And then also, like Kieran asks, he assumes there will be a bigger loss in wort too. Then, I mean, the absorption, I guess, would be higher.
They absorb a lot more. So yes, you end up with less beer. I mean, if you're going big scale like we do 6 hectoliters. But if you're doing a 40 or a 30 liter in a grain father or 25 in a grain father, I think we only ended up with about 16 or 15 liters of beer. It was
wow.
a lot of effort for very little beer, but it was delicious. It was delicious.
Have any of you guys brewed with local Cascade yet?
No, not yet.
No, I need to get my hands on some, but it's in Cape Town and I can't travel there right now.
Nick?
Yeah, so we've done whole cone and the wet hop with the local Cascade. It's really good. For me, it's like a pink grapefruit kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it shows up really nicely in the beer.
Nice. So I guess you're saying those sort of beers, like the wet up ones, you need, like Julian says, there's definitely value in charging more money for them. There's a lot more effort that goes into making them and a lot more cleanup and a lot more mess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole mission, you know. I mean, the hopback works really well for those, like, because that's kind of a natural place for it. But yeah, like you said, you kind of have to use a lot more. To get the bang for the more in the talents. It's a fun thing. It's one time a year, you know. It's a fun way to kind of celebrate the harvest and brew something unique at that time.
Yeah. Talking about price point as well. I mean, where do you see price of beer going after this? Price of craft beer going? I mean, like we've obviously, you know, we're talking about breweries. A lot of breweries being in trouble because their doors have been closed for a month now, and that kind of leads me to question whether beer is too cheap. You know, the fact that if you can't sell beer for enough to kind of pay the bills with some contingency in there, then you look at the price of beer. I've traveled through the States and through the UK, you know, and the price, you happily pay $8 or £8 for a decent can of beer. And we don't see that. We don't see the sort of 160 Rand. We don't see like 100 Rand, or we don't see like plus 50 Rand beers around very much in this country, you know, like do you see that evolving more, or do you see the situation getting worse because a lot of guys are going to have beer that they want to shift and therefore they're going to drive the price down?
I think from our side, I think shifting beer at the moment is the most important thing, is getting it out there. And beer has always been what they call an FMCG, fast moving consumer good. So you got to get it out there as quick as possible. And yes, we have seen the 120, 130, 150 Rand bottle releases, your whiskey barrel bourbon releases, for example. A lot of the stuff that we got from Steph, which is really, really nice. The sour beers, the limited edition. I mean, these things have been in barrels for 3-4 years, and you're willing to pay 150, 160, 170 Rand for either a barrel aged beer or a soured beer, because you know that the time that it's gone into it, it's. I mean, people won't blink at paying 100, 120, 200, 300, 400, 900, 1200 Rand for a bottle of wine. For example, if you get a good bottle of Rupert and Rothschild, it was a vintage of so many bottles are released. I mean, all of our bottles are limited releases. All of our cans, funny enough, are actually, well, our cans are, because every single can's got its own unique label with a number on it, and every single can is unique. Yeah, I mean, but I can't charge 80 Rand for a can because no one's going to buy a can of beer. Yeah. But if I go ahead and say, listen, you guys, you're getting a limited edition beer for 35 Rand a beer, and then when our bottle, our ale that we've got in the Jack Daniel's barrel at the moment, we're planning on putting it in either champagne or 660 bottles. We can say, listen, 150. It's been there for the last year. It's worth it, you know. And then you got to put a value on it.
I got onto the question because I'm drinking this Funny Hope now, which is from last year, and it's a phenomenal beer. You know, like it's 8.5%. What size are these bottles? 500 ml bottles.
Yeah.
It's stunning, and I think I picked it up for less than 60 rand, which, you know, for the guys in the UK is like £3. And
Free.
in the
No, that's free. That's free.
in the UK, you cannot buy 500 mils of decent beer for £3. And I mean, you can buy beer for cheaper than that in the supermarkets by all means. But I mean, I drank a lot of supermarket beers while I was over there, and it doesn't compete with the stuff that they're selling for more than that. And if you've got a big brewery making a beer as good as this and then selling it for $60, is that a good thing because it's accessible to the market and it gets people interested in it, or is it a bad thing because it pushes price point down for guys like you that are making smaller batches and you know, trying to make something a bit different? I don't know, Nick, you probably don't struggle with price point quite so much because you're on consumption, hey? So most for now anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, you start looking at the packaging, it's a huge factor because it for guys like me that use it.
What does that cost? That empty bottle?
Yeah, that's probably $8 or $9 or so.
And then this together.
I mean, yeah. So it's going to cost you, maybe 6 to 10.
You forgot the label, Mike.
Yeah, the label's expensive, eh?
The labels. So to do it in a small batch and to make beers that are really hoppy with, premium malt and small batch and all this stuff, it's very expensive. So for us, it's all about how do we educate the customer that it's worth it. I think that's where we see the gap is. And, we all have to keep in mind that the craft beer scene in South Africa is still relatively new, and you don't have the strong consumer base that you have in the UK or the US. Craft beer has been around 30 years in the States. And so for me, it's all about trying to educate people on why it's worth it. And that's where we have a lot of opportunity as an industry.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's kind of where we're responsible to sort of change attitudes a bit on beer. Beer is not just wet lager that
exactly.
That you drink 8 pints of it. It can be that, just that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, packaging for the craft brewer these days is expensive.
I think also.
Sorry, Megan, you're such a lag.
I think also. Sorry. There's probably a lag on my side too. I think a lot of breweries also accept that their big expensive beers are going to cost them money just to get their names out there. So they can't really charge 100 or 150 rand a bottle, even though that's what they should be charging because it's something special. They just accept that they might make a loss on it, but people are going to be talking about it on social media. So it's advertising for them. It's kind of a loss leader. So I think our beer industry is still too young to be able to charge the right prices for some of these beers, but we're getting there. I've paid a lot of money for some really, really good beers that deserve to be paid for. So I guess that's
the crux as well. I mean, like, you don't want to be paying a lot of money for beers that are terrible either, so they have to hold up. Yeah,
for sure.
Where's my thing gone again? Might have to. I know we're back. Seems like no one's connection is too happy today.
No, Jules looks like he's gone for another beer. Hey, he's back.
So, Nick, David says that he's using your growler he bought last April to condition his beer in, and has a Cascade Smash Pale in it at the moment, and they keep it well. But the problem is that when he opens it, he's got to drink 4 bottles worth.
Yeah.
Which is not a problem, but he just has to do it. Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Very cool.
Fools and Fans last year. We might have to wrap it up, guys, because it looks like the stream has died again. We started off badly, and we've ended badly, but I think everything in between was okay.
Yes. No, good. But yeah, packaging is expensive. Packaging is ridiculously expensive. That's why we went from bottles to cans.
Yeah.
Canning is cheaper. Transporting is cheaper. Storage is cheaper. It's just crazy. Okay, the canning line was a little bit more expensive, but we get zero oxidation in there. Our DO is low. It's great.
Yeah. Well, that can definitely stood up from Afro before.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100 with you. Ta-da!
Folded it.
We're going to do this. Where are we? Oh, you can't see it in the background again, but there, put it in my face. I'm going to suck on that now. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well this YouTube is working today for some reason. So I'm gonna end it there, guys. But
Cool.
thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
it was
Mike.
great to
Thanks,
have your
Mike.
guys'
Cool,
opinion and enjoy some beers with you, at least remotely, even though
Yes.
we can't sit together and drink beers
Cool.
socially.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot. Hey, it was great
Thanks,
seeing you
Mike.
guys.
Cheers, Nick. Take
Good to
care,
see
man.
you.
Cheers,
Cheers.
Megan. See you guys again, man.
Bye.
Bye,
Cheers.
guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Ciao.
And if any of you guys have hung on in the background there on YouTube, I'm sorry for the stream issues at the start, and also now it's still buffering away on my side here. But thanks a lot for joining us, and next week tune in again. We'll have another Friday Meet the Brewers session. Until then, cheers.
Okay, that was awkward.
Janet, yeah.